Hi, this is my video review of the book Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health by L. Ron Hubbard. If you just want a quick answer of what I think about this book, definitely read it. That's what I'm going to say. Because some people might click on review things and just want to find out straight away what people think about something and not hear a long explanation. And I don't want to have to make someone sit through 10 minutes of me talking before I give my review of it. But I give this 5 out of 5 stars, and I totally recommend you getting into it and checking it out. I consider this book to be the best non-fiction book ever written. Probably the best ever written. I can't think of something that competes with it. I think it's very life-changing. I think the information in it is very interesting. And when I first read it 6 years ago, it just really hit me like, whoa, this is a really interesting book. Now, before I read this book, I watched a DVD of it, and that made reading it made it have a lot more sense, and it was a lot easier for me to read it after I'd watched the DVD. And to be honest, actually, I think, yeah, totally, I think watch the DVD before you read this. And I probably think the DVD is better than this, but the DVD is based on this. And the reason why I like the DVD better is because I just like movies over books more. I think books have too many hard words in them, and movies, I think, can, especially when it's like an instructional sort of video, I think it can convey the information a lot better. And so the DVD to How to Use DVD of Dianetics, check that out, especially before you read this. Now, the reason why I think this is the best non-fiction book ever written, and I guess I could say this is the best book ever written, actually, because I'm trying to think of fiction books that compare to this, and it's just like, this is probably the best book ever written, I think. And this is a book that started the Scientology religion, because it didn't exist before this book. And this book got released, and people started getting involved in it and doing Dianetics because it's something that you do, and then it became Scientology a few years after that, and then so it started a whole movement and a whole religion. This book was on the bestseller list when it first got released for a long time, and it was a hit, and it doesn't surprise me. I thought it was awesome as well. What this book has in it is, It talks about how the mind works, and it talks about a little bit of philosophy about life. And it also teaches you how to do this Dianetic therapy. So you can do it with a friend or something. If they read the book as well, you can then both do it. And Dianetic therapy can help people a lot with different things, different problems they have. And even if someone doesn't have any problems, it can make them even better and even happier and even healthier. So like, it's a pretty important book because it teaches you how to do the therapy right. A bit of the philosophy side of it, what this book to me represented is that it represented an idea that I hadn't really come across before, because I hadn't looked into spiritualism or other things like that. And what this book said is that your mind is over matter. Like, as in, your mind can do shit to you. Whereas I thought it was the other way around, whereas there's nothing that goes on in your mind can affect your body. You know what I mean? But this book here suddenly put the idea in my head of, oh, hold on, your mind can actually cause things? That's really interesting. I thought it was just the other way around. And I don't know, that was just a really interesting idea. It suddenly changes the way you think about everything. And it says here, it talks about how in life you go through painful experiences, or you just have some bad experiences, right? And it slightly scars you a little bit, like slightly scars your mind a little bit, and then it affects you from there on. And then if you do this Dianetic therapy, you get rid of those little scars that you've collected throughout your life, and then you get back yourself and who you are. So someone who's like a rape victim, for example, or like someone who's been beaten up a lot, someone like Eminem, for example, because you can hear his music, like clearly he's stuck in the past and he's upset about shit because he's so angry in his songs and stuff. Like Eminem seriously, clearly has issues, right? He's someone who would get a lot out of this because he would run out these emotional problems that he has, for example. Then after that, he would probably make some rap songs where he's a lot happier and positive and doesn't keep on talking about, his mum being a drug addict and shit and all this crazy shit from the past. What this book says is that you get stuck in the past. You go along in life and shit happens, and then from there on out, you keep on thinking with shit from the past instead of just being fresh and new and here and positive and stuff. Like, you've all probably come across someone who says something like, oh, I never trust them. I got into a bad experience with that person or that type of person. I never trust them again. And you can just tell that they're bitter and that they're affected by the past. Or like someone who's gone through a divorce and they talk about the person they divorced from and they go, oh, he's bad, blah, blah, blah. And you can just tell that person's bitter and needs to get over the past. You know what I mean? And this teaches a therapy of how to get over the past and explains how your mind works. And it's really cool. So yeah, that big thing that I got out of it was the fact that it was like, hold on, my mind can affect what goes on in my body. And a lot of spiritual people and stuff say that, say similar sort of ideas where it's like the book The Secret or whatever, where it's like it's what you think that causes reality, not necessarily, like if you have a bung knee, it's not necessarily because you're born with a bad knee. It has something. It has a mental side to it that you caused that. And Jesus said something like, he said some sort of idea that like all problems are actually spiritual problems, and they're not, necessarily because of a disease or something like that. Like, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about, right? So, do you ever notice how some people always get sick and other people don't always get sick? And you can take someone who doesn't get sick and actually have them drink a drink by the person who is sick to try and get the germs, right? And they don't get sick. And it's like, well, if germs were the things that were causing colds, then that person, no matter how healthy they are, if they take that germ, they should get sick from it. But some people don't get sick. You know what I mean? There's a lot. This world doesn't really make sense, and there's a lot more going on than what you think. And this book here is suggesting that people's minds are causing people's sicknesses. And I definitely know that some people are born with illnesses, right? And born with problems, right? Like in their DNA or whatever. But I definitely think a lot of the time people are unwell and are sick because it's a mental thing that's going on with them. It's like a spiritual thing that's going on with them. So it just sort of changes your universe when you start thinking with that, and then you start looking out in life and looking to where there's situations where, maybe, that person got sick because not because they came across a disease, like something else. Like for example, people say cigarettes cause cancer, but then why are there heaps of people who can smoke cigarettes and never get cancer? So it's probably not correct to say cigarettes cause cancer. It's probably correct to say cigarettes can help to cause cancer. But we don't really know what causes cancer, do we? Because if cigarettes cause cancer, everyone who smokes a lot would get cancer. It would be like, water always boils at 100 degrees. That's like proven scientific fact. But not everyone who smokes a lot of cigarettes gets cancer. So what the hell's going on there? What's the cause of cancer? You know what I mean? There's lots of unusual things in life that aren't necessarily what's going on. And it can trick people, you know what I mean? And it's confusing. Anyway, I'm rambling on, but so this book, to me, I read it and I kind of thought, because at the time I was having problems with depression in life, and I was just like, fuck life's shit and stuff. Like, it's just so boring. I was just working as a slave, going in, and I'd finished school, and I'd just been going in doing the same thing. It was so boring and stuff, and everything was just crap, right? And this book suggested to me that the reason why things are crap is because of your mind. And you just need to do some Dianetic therapy, right? And things will be sweet for you. So for me, it was like, whoa, this suddenly gave me hope that things can get good. Which was really cool. Because it was like you read it and you're like, I hope this is true. I hope this actually works. You know, I hope when I do this therapy, and I hope this is all right. And then I've done some of it, and it is kind of right. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't done enough of the therapy in this book in order to say that this book's definitely 100% right, but it definitely made me a lot better. And your mind does, you know, weigh you down. Like someone who does a lot of meditation, for example, they're chilled out and they're calm, and they walk around and they can just be happy and positive, right? And so their meditation is kind of like this Dianetic therapy. You either do meditation or you do the Dianetic therapy, right? But it just throws the junk in your mind away. It throws away all those problems from the past, those scars that you have, those mental scars you have. So then you can enjoy things, you know what I mean? And this says here that, you know, this says here that you can make your IQ better, you can make yourself healthier, you can make yourself happier, you can get rid of sicknesses and all this sort of stuff with this therapy, because it makes you positive, you know? And it's true. And I've spoken to a lot of people who have done a lot of this stuff, and, you know, they've got a bounce in their step and they're a lot happier and all this sort of stuff, because, you know, you got to have a healthy body, you got to eat well, you got to have a healthy mind, you got to do therapies, and you got to do meditations, that sort of stuff. And yeah, so it's interesting. And another idea that this thing talks about as well is it says that the meaning of life is to survive. And I think that's a really big thing. That really changed me, that idea. It was like, wow, so that's what everything's trying to do, survive and stay alive. You know, and stay alive the best it can. Like a tree, or me, or you, or a cat. They want to stay alive, you know. And the way to... Whenever anything has pain in it, it means it's not helping your survival. And anything that has pleasure in it means it's helping your survival. The only thing tricky with that is stuff like chocolate and like drugs, because some people get tricked into thinking, you know, this makes me feel better, so then it's good for my survival, right? But here's the thing. For me personally, chocolates, McDonald's, drugs, maybe a little bit feel better, but if you keep on doing them, it makes me feel worse. Right? So then it's not survival. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. Sorry, I'm really not in the mood for doing this this review, but it just really ring true with me. Like, I was just like, this is just true. I noticed that whenever you eat good food, whenever you watch good movies or do this good or that good, they tend to help your survival and bring you up, and you win more in life. But bad things like drugs and heaps of fast takeaway food and getting into arguments with people, those things bring you down. They stop you from surviving, you know? So what it enables you to do is, enables you to stop and go, well, what job should I work? Who should I be friends with? What food should I eat? And you look at it and you go, well, this job helps my survival, so I'll do this. This friend helps my survival, so I'll be friends with that person. This movie is entertaining, so it helps my survival. You know what I mean? Let's say you're using Facebook too much and it's screwing up your survival. Well, I'll stop using Facebook too much. You know what I mean? And drugs can slow you down and cause problems, so I won't use that. So to me, it guides you into what you should do in your life. And I guess when I came across it, I was just a 21-year-old who didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. And then suddenly you get answers to things, and you're like, oh, well, you got to survive, and you got to do things that are pleasurable and that help you in the future. And you start instead of being confused, you start being able to know what you want to do with your life and just determine things and stuff. And it just gives you answers, you know? Because some people say, oh, the meaning of life is to have children, and then like, I don't know, that doesn't give me much meaning, you know what I mean? Or it doesn't give me answers, you know, whereas this, the meaning of life is to survive the best you can. And then I go, hold on, oh wow, yeah, that makes sense to me. Like, all the times I felt good were doing things that helped my survival. And I was always confused why people like alcohol so much, because I never liked it. It didn't make me feel good, it made me feel bad. And like, that makes sense then, because alcohol's not good for survival, you know? So to me, it just was like, this is just true. This is just on the ball. This is like, and it was like a guiding thing. So yeah. So anyway, I mean, I'm just talking a bit about the ideas of the book and stuff, but it's just like, I mean, if this started a religion, you know what I mean? Obviously, it's a bit of a special book. And it's, I guess for like Scientologists, it's kind of like their Bible, sort of. And I'll just explain a bit about the book. It's not actually as big as this, right? This is a newer version of the book that the Church of Scientology has made. And I wouldn't, to be honest, I actually wouldn't recommend reading this one, because it's a whole long story, but the church is basically corrupt, and they've changed Hubbard's writings in order to make more money from them and try and sell them again to make more money, right? So what they've done is they've just changed the cover of it, and they've changed a few things around, which I disagree with, and they've put this big thing at the end. So this many pages isn't even part of the book, it's just a glossary and just advertising crap. So the book's only actually this big, so it's not as big as what you think. But you can go online and probably download the older version for free, which is what I'd recommend. I'll recommend trying to get like the 1950 version or 60 version. Any of L. Ron Hubbard's books, try and get copies of them that were released when he was alive, because after he left, things in the church turned to shit, and they got corrupted. So I'll try and find an older version, and I know you can download this for free, actually, at a website called Scientolopedia. You can actually download all the Scientology materials, new and old, for free. And like all of them. And I'd recommend doing that, because it's a pretty cool religion. Like, get into it. Maybe avoid the church and that sort of stuff, but that's a whole nother story. But you can check out one of the other videos I've done about that. But yeah, this is the newer version. Don't get this version, right? But also, what you'll notice in this when you're reading it is that it can be a little bit tricky, because it's got hard words, and Hubbard's got a strange way of writing. Like, he writes in a hurry and stuff, but don't be too, you know, it can be a little bit tricky, but watch the DVD beforehand. But also, as you read this, right, it seems to be that he keeps on repeating himself. And I always thought that was a little bit strange. Like, he just would say something, and he would say sort of a similar thing later on in the book, and you'd be like, why is he repeating himself, right? But I found out that apparently when he wrote this, he wrote it and it was, you know, this long, and then the publisher said, no, it needs to be longer, so he went and had to write more. So he was having to write, he had to make the book longer than what it needed to be. And so that's why it seems like he's repeating things, because he had to extend the length of the book and stuff. And I didn't know that when I first read it, and I found it a little bit confusing. But when I found out that, I heard someone say that, and it made a lot more sense to me when I read it than after I heard that he was just trying to, you know, fill in more space. Anyway, so check out this Dianetics book, and I'll just read out what it says at the back here. It says, Dianetics is an adventure. It is an exploration into the human mind, that vast and unknown realm half an inch back of our foreheads. So it's just like you get into this and you start exploring your mind when you start doing the therapy and stuff, and it is an adventure. And I started on the adventure, and it's the best thing I've ever done. And it's just, life was so boring before this, to be honest. It really was. And you get into this, and suddenly you start, you know, finding out that you find out all this stuff about the world. It's just like, wow, I never knew that was possible. Like, do you know you can move objects with your mind? Like, if you get trained enough in it. Like, people can turn on light bulbs with their mind, and some people can light pieces of paper of electricity They can shoot electricity out of their hands into a piece of paper and light it on fire. Do you know how people can communicate telepathy? They can communicate, they can read other people's minds. Do you know some people, right, spiritually can leave their body and float around the room? Right? Like, this isn't just made up stuff. Like, this is serious. So before I got into all this opened up a door to all this spiritual and unusual things I didn't know were possible. Ghosts exist. Look it up on the thing. Aliens exist. Look it up on YouTube, right? Before I found out about all these things, I thought everything was so boring and simple and just boring as ever. Just so boring. You just go to work, you do the same thing, you blah, 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 blah. And then, or maybe things will be fun if you make a funny movie or, you get a bit rich or something, But then there's so much more going on in this world that I didn't know about, And when you start finding out about this stuff, suddenly you're like, no, life is really cool. There's a lot going on, and it's a lot funner than maybe what you think. So start checking out all these other things. Anyway, if you want to see more stuff by me, I've got a podcast called The Kink Podcast. Just, search it on iTunes, and I talk about a lot of interesting things. And I do talk a lot about Scientology in that. And so check that out. Thanks.